Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with a comic book that, for me, means a whole lot. This is X-Men 94. This is the first issue where Chris Claremont took on the X-Men and gave us 16 years of, I'm going to say excellency, because during them the X-Men were selling like hotcakes, even though some people said the book kind of waned, which I can understand. But overall, this is where all the major story arcs that you cared about, the Dark Phoenix saga, Inferno, Fall of the Mutants, the Mutant Massacre, all these, introducing us to all the X-Men, Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, all the big ones that were from the animated series, and all the episodes from that show based on Claremont's work, and a lot of it was taken into the movies in the early 2000s. So this is a pivotal issue. I just about leaped for joy when I finally got my real physical copy. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Brian. He found it for me at a really good price. And what was awesome about it is after I got that book, I think it was a week later, Chris Claremont came to New Mexico. I got to meet him finally and have him sign this issue. That's probably one of my favorite memories of recent from, geek-wise. And then what was cool is because after it got signed, I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to take this book out of the bag to read. The original Marvel app, which I hate that they got rid of and they did this whole stupid Marvel Unlimited. It's a whole thing about talking about digital versus physical. And anyway, the old app used to have a section when you would load it up and you'd go to free, and they give you free downloads. And for the most part, it would just be like, teaser issues, blah, 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 blah. But if you paid attention week to week, you would get some pretty good stuff. Like I got Luke Cage, #1, got a few others. And then during COVID, Marvel did on their free thing gave you like the whole thing of Civil War and other long collected trades like that. It was awesome. But anyway, I digress. Shortly after Claremont came, had my physical copy of 94 signed, I was poking through the Marvel app, and this was a free download. So I'm like, everything just lined up for just that perfect alignment of the planets. I finally got a copy of 94 signed by Claremont, and then I got a digital copy so I could read it. And here we are, me sharing it with you guys. And you can just see the lovely artwork of Gil Kane here. The release date of this comic, from what I understand, was June 10th, 1975. And before Giant Size X-Men, which is what precedes this issue, the X-Men were flailing in terms of sales. It was still, at that time, I think it was Stan Lee was still writing it, and then the artists would kind of come and go. Of course, the X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but the artists kind of came and went. Same with the writers. And for like 5 years leading up to Giant Size X-Men #1, the book was floundering so bad that they were just basically printing, as the issues continued, it was just reprints of older stories from what I understand, until they finally put the book on hiatus. Wein and Dave Cockrum, I believe it was, gave us Giant Size X-Men, showing us something new, because, they were talking about how they wanted to create an international team, which we got Russian, we got African, we got Canadian, we got German. So we just get this whole mixture, and it just adds this whole nother level to the book. Now, from what I understand, if you go, I've said this in many X-Men reviews, and I'm going to say it again. I think it's still free on YouTube. I still think it's free on Amazon Prime. Go watch the documentary called Chris Claremont's X-Men. And it kind of dives into the history with him, Louise Simonson, and Ann Nasanti, and how they all worked together to give us the X-Men, the New Mutants, and all that good stuff. And yeah, just excellent stuff all around. And I'm really excited because I love this issue. The reason I bring that up is Wein initially wanted to continue with X-Men, but I think he was the editor-in-chief at the time or something like that. And he said, I have too much on my plate. Is there anyone willing to take the book? Claremont was new. His parents kind of helped him get a gig through a friend at Marvel, and he goes, "Oh, hey, I'll take it." And as Paul Harvey would say, "And now you know the rest of the story." So with that said, let's talk about who made this monumental freaking book. This is Chris Claremont, writer, Len Wein, plotter and editor, Dave Cockrum, artist, Bob McLeod, inker, Phil Rachelson, colorist, and Tom Orzechowski, the letterer. So with that, and Gil Kane and Danny Crespi and Dave Cockrum on the cover, freaking powerhouse team here, guys. So this is called the Doomsmith Scenario. This takes place immediately after Giant Size X-Men #1. And it says it begins with an ending. And perhaps the breaking of a man's heart. This man's heart. The heart of Charles Xavier. And what happens is essentially, because when Xavier went around the globe and picked out the X-Men that he wanted to save the OG team from Krakoa, yes, Krakoa is bad, let's establish that, he got Shiro, Sunfire, to be part of the team. And Shiro says, "As to the future, Professor, it's a future that does not include Sunfire." Shiro, I don't understand. I thought you'd agreed to join us. I agreed to help you, Professor, once. And once was enough. My duty is to my country and my emperor. I care nothing for the world you offer. I want none of it. None of you and none of your X-Men. And so Xavier turns and goes, "I see. Does anybody else kind of echo his sentiment?" And Storm saying, "It's too early. I wish to see what the professor has to offer." And then I love how Logan here just says, "What the hey? It sure beats sitting around Alpha Base waiting for a go call." So even here in the beginning, before John Byrne, we get the seeds of Alpha Flight. Because if you remember, Guardian, or as he was first called, Vindicator, and the rest of Alpha Flight was introduced in X-Men. And then spiraling out of the books when John Byrne kind of set out on his own, he started the Alpha Flight comic. So anyway, that just kind of shows a quick tie-in with Wolverine's Canadian origin. So Sunfire says, "Then the Sunfire bids you farewell, Professor. You and your pack of idealistic fools. But hear me, Xavier. Should you need the Samurai's help again, do not seek me out and do not ask, for Sunfire will refuse." And so we just see how that very hardened, embittered Shiro Shiro Yoshida, Mariko's cousin, is just this hard ass. And you know, we have 3 characters in the Marvel universe that kind of have that persona. Off the top of my head, I'm sure there's more, but the 3 that really stand out in my mind would be Shiro, obviously, North Star, and Pietro, Quicksilver. Those 3 just have that very arrogant feeling, but you can't help but like them. So Banshee's talking about how this new team is younger, and yet he's older. And if you remember, he was an enemy of the X-Men in the early days. And he's like, you know, there's some gray among the Banshee's golden hair. It's been grand, but it's time I was moving on. And I love how Xavier kind of calls him on. He goes, "Rubbish. Your hair is about as gray as mine. Haha. And your brain's a fraction keener. However, if these young people are too much of a challenge for you..." And he's like, "Oh, okay, Professor, challenge accepted. I'm sold. You got yourself an X-Men. It'd be nice to belong for once." So while you're thinking, okay, Shiro left, whatever, all the drama's gone, here's everyone starting to kind of connect. And Xavier says, "Well, excellent. Then now that all that's settled, another freaking bombshell. Angel, I'm afraid it isn't, Professor." "What do you mean, Warren?" "I'm sorry, Professor. There's no easy way to say this. We, the old X-Men, we're leaving, sir. We're pulling out." And it's just kind of dun, dun, dun. And if you think about it, when Claremont was on the book, it did feel soapbox opera-y. But that's what drove the books, because then it made you care about what happened to them during the action. Dark Phoenix Saga, prime example. And you just see the hurt on Xavier's face. You're what? Why? And here, Jean says, because we were children when you took us in, Professor, scared and uncertain about who and what we were. You taught us, helped us realize our full potential. You helped us grow up, and that's just it. We're grown up. We're not children anymore. We have to learn to live our own lives. Now, I can't remember if this was in Chris Claremont's documentary or when I was kind of hearing him talk to everybody during the book signing when I met him. He was saying that he wanted to push all the old X-Men out because he wanted it to be kind of like a growing book. Like later down the road, he would phase out Wolverine, Storm, and that's why he kind of was starting to introduce like Kitty, and he started getting younger, the New Mutants, for example. He even said, I think he said his ultimate goal, and if I'm wrong, feel free to make fun of me down in the comments, but I remember him saying somewhere along the line that at issue 300, he wanted to kill off Xavier and make Magneto the successor of the School of Gifted Youngsters, which I appreciate that the showrunners did at the end of the original 90s X-Men show. And you could see that how he was sort of the headmaster of the New Mutants when Xavier was, I think he was in Shi'ar space with Lilandra. That whole part of the X-Men era gets a little murky in my head and I have a hard time keeping it together. But it would make sense instead of seeing like, characters, old Superman, Batman from the 30s that are still going. That's why I was excited, for example, when Grant Morrison, I thought they were really I didn't really think, but kind of hoping in a sense that they killed off Bruce Wayne just for fresh blood. And if you guys remember after Batman R.I.P. when Dick Grayson took on the mantle of Batman and Damian was Robin, that era for that rocked. I hated the Red Robin book. I wish that they would have done something different with Tim Drake. But for Dick to take on the role of Batman, that makes sense because he's the oldest son of the Wayne family. Yes, I know he's adopted, blah, 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 blah. But I say that because it would make sense with this where we came here for Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and now we need to learn to go live our own lives and start introducing new characters. And I think that gets lost a lot in translation in newer books now, where you kind of get some characters that you care about, like Anoli and the Rock guy and stuff like that, but you don't see him as much, and the X-Men are supposed to be like the teachers, and it gets convoluted. Anyway, early on here, I love how Logan's like, look, lady, you guys went out that badly, then split. Take off. What do we care? Just do us all a favor and spare us the soap opera. And him and Warren get into a fight, and Scott is torn because Jean's assuming that he's going to come with her. And it's here where it says, it's a long night for the mutant X-Men Scott Summers. He can't sleep, and in truth, he doesn't really try. Instead, he roams the mansion that has been home for so many years. Roams and thinks and remembers and curses. Face it, Summers, no matter which way you cut it, you're the X-Men who can't hide what he is. And one who dares not forget, because if he does, someone might get killed. Killed because of my eyes, my cursed mutant energy blasting eyes. The anguished, desperate cry rings out hollow in the stillness. And if anyone hears it, they give no sign. So the next morning, Jean's like, you're still in your uniform. And he goes, Jean, I've thought it over, and I've decided to stay. I thought you would, but I'd hoped. And he says, I love you, but my life is an X-Men. And so that it's kind of a bittersweet ending. And I need to go back because apparently on Classic X-Men issue 1, because they did a reprint run. I don't know how long Classic X-Men went. We went over Classic X-Men 3, which was a reprint of 95, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is at the end of all the Classic X-Men comics, they would give you backstory that wasn't in the original book. So you get more behind the scenes. And from what I understand is that the backstory for Classic X-Men 1 was kind of Jean's point of view of why she decided to leave and why she let Cyclops go. Now with that, we can see Cyclops has kind of, given into his decisions, and he goes, all right, people, the show's over and it's time Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters was a going concern again. time when you learned what it's about, being an X-Men is all about. Lesson 1 is how to stay alive. That's what the danger room is for. To give you a second, maybe 2, time and the skill to take that time and to use it and defeat your opponent in a word, to survive. And everyone's like, to survive an empty room? And John Proudstar, Warpath, he's very much got a chip on his shoulder. And he goes, you got to be kidding me, One Eye. I'm going to call you and see you at the exit, troops. And Claremont says, perhaps, John Proudstar. What the? Hey, let go. Then again, perhaps not. And I like how Scott says, if the room lets you. And that's kind of what it reminds me where it says, welcome to the X-Men. We hope you survive the experience. Now look at this, where it kind of gives you this quick... in film, you call it a montage, which is supposed to be a passage of time. This is more like a collage because you get this gorgeous splash page at Cyclops at the center talking about how he's grueling these teammates to a razor-sharp edge. He goes, the voice of the man named Cyclops, who drives the X-Men hard and himself harder. Takes 6 proud, unique individuals, 6 loners, 6 outcasts, and forges them into a team. And now listen to this. But even the X-Men, after all, are only human. Pushed to the limit, pushed beyond exhaustion, begins to take a toll on teacher and students both. I bring that up because of the BS that's going on in Krakoa. We're like, we're gods. We can't die. We're amazing. We're everything. Bullshit. Yes, you have extra powers, but you're human just like the rest of us. As Beast so eloquently said in his trial at the beginning of the animated series back in the 90s, he quoted Shakespeare saying, prick us, do we not bleed? And I can't remember the whole quote, but it was very beautifully done. And so to have that all spat on from this new Krakoan age, to me, it just kills everything that this book was about. Now, I like how Claremont reintroduces Count Nefaria, which I guess was X-Men 22 and 23. And just seeing the artwork from Dave Cockrum, absolute joy. And you can see the misery in Cyclops' eyes because of the decisions he's had to make with the curse that he's been given, or so he thinks it's a curse. And you can just see at the beginning, Kurt. I didn't mean to intrude. It's okay, I was just thinking, come on in. And he's saying, how can I help you? Actually, I was wondering if there's anything I could do for you. I mean, the argument with Thunder with John, it upsets you, no? So you start to kind of get a sense of who everyone is. There's a point back here that I wanted to make and I just totally forgot, and I'm still getting used to the tablet here, guys. Where is it? Where John gets hurt. He mouths off at Cyclops, and he thinks to himself, way to go, hotshot. Looks like you've blown another chance for yourself. Maybe the last one. And he snaps at Storm and he goes, what's the matter, lady? It bother you to work with a loser? And here you can see, what's the word? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. You can see the caring that Storm is. The why can I not think of the word? Compassion. There's the word I'm looking for. She goes, I see no loser, John Proudstar. In this room, I see only a man. And that's how Storm has always been. When people are hard on themselves, she is always the one that's, for the most part, the voice of reason. That's why Kitty looks to her as a surrogate mother. But, of course, just like with John Proudstar, we're all human. When Storm has her moments, like when she loses her powers and she doesn't know how to cope with it, and she kind of becomes a rebel there for a while and starts taking some chances. It even scares Kitty a little bit. But still, it just shows that even those who we look up to go through rough patches. And that's why we all love Storm. We love Logan because he has honor. He can be disciplined, but he's broken and still works to repair himself every time that he falters. Same with Scott. I know a lot of people hate Scott, but you have to think Scott, Leonardo from the Turtles, they are the leaders. Even if their teammates, who become family, and in the Turtle sense, brothers, when they mess up, the leaders take it because it's their responsibility to keep their unit together. And that's why Cyclops always comes off very assholey because, example, the animated series when Morph dies, and he pulls everyone back, and Wolverine's like, why'd you leave him behind? I had to think of the group, Wolverine. And even though it pained him to do it, and Logan understands it, because he's worked in the Canadian government, he gets it, he still hates it. And that's why he decks Cyclops. And that's why he always comes off dickish. But when you're a leader, heavy hangs the crown. So guys, this book, I've read it so many times through the years, and to this day, it still rings strong for me. If y'all can get your hands on the classic X-Men #1, or if you got the ducats and can get a copy of an original 94, I highly recommend it. I would say use the digital just as a reader so you're not messing up your physical copy, because why I'm saying I hate these digital copies is, for example, the original Marvel app. They got rid of it, I'd forgotten, and they sent me an email saying, last chance to download Marvel Unlimited and save your digital copies. I hate digital because you don't own it. At any time, Marvel Ultimate or Unlimited, whatever it's called, could pull the plug and I'll lose all these digitals. Same thing with movies, books, blah, 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 blah. I use them as backups, not as my main source of my library. I'll always be a physical media junkie, and that's what I love about comics, especially now that I've finally gotten the studio kind of together. When I walk in there, even though my comics are in my closet, I walk in and you can just smell the pages, and it smells like a comic shop, and it's just that calming feeling like you smell the old books when you go into a library. So anyway, that aside, X-Men 94, guys, highly, highly recommend it. And if you're a huge X-Men fan like I am, this is one of those key books that you want in your collection, as well as 95, because it even takes further into Cyclops being a leader. We've gone over it in the form of Classic X-Men #3, so I'll leave a card around here so you guys can click it and check it out at your convenience. So with that said, as I said, if you enjoyed this book, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is you like to get your comics and books, and see if you can't get a physical copy, a reprint, or Classic X-Men #1. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Nefaria bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.